go. I wanted to focus on a topic that affected me personally. This way, I would be willing to get more invested into it. Thus, I looked at the concept of net neutrality. That sounds interesting. More specifically, I wanted to focus on how it will affect our investment choices in the future. The public might look at getting rid of net neutrality as a bad thing because they believe that it will cause the internet to slow down or have extra payment for services. I thought this way as well, but maybe it isn't the case. By getting rid of net neutrality, it will more likely drive competition and cause people to invest in something they really want. This is what I want to explore. I want to consider how net neutrality affects different areas, demographics, and their investments. Maybe the different areas around the country will be affected differently by net neutrality or lack thereof. It will be an interesting topic to touch on because there's a lot of data in the past that I can use to make some predictions about what our future holds. My plan is to conclude at the end of the paper that as to I support net neutrality or not. There will be some interesting data points that will optimize different points considered. The paper will be compelling to write because it will allow me to think outside the box, and it'll need way different measures in the past. The struggle I might come across is how I might measure future investment. It is hard to say what people will invest in the future, but I may have to do a little forecasting and come up with a strong prediction. This may deter me away from this topic, but I am hoping I can find sufficient reliable data. All right, so net neutrality and investment incentives, 2010. Okay, so that was when net neutrality was probably going to be put into law with the Obama administration. And then the economics of network neutrality. Fascinating to understanding the trade-offs, journal of economic perspectives, zero pricing, and net neutrality. Yeah, so especially with that being a hot button lately, got some good good spots, econ journals to look at. No, that sounds fun. Okay, I think Alex, yeah, with the investment part. I guess when I first read your word investment, I was thinking maybe you were talking about stock type investment, but maybe you're not. Maybe you're talking about investment in capital machines and equipment. So what did you guys take that as?
I think it's stock.
Yeah, that's what I kind of got the impression just from reading.
Investment, I was thinking services, investing in service. This is talking about how they might, if you want a more premium service, they'll raise the price. So if you really want that, you have to invest in it.
Yeah. All right. So a little clarification on the investment part. On what was meant. Yeah. Does it? So I think part of the argument for getting rid of the net neutrality. Did you guys know much about what it is? I'm not an expert in it, but I kind of got the gist of it. That it allowed service providers to potentially charge for different services. So that was the rub. That what about poor people that can't afford it? And I think my sense is that they need the poor people too, in such a way that there wouldn't be incentive to slow down, but rather to speed it up and then to recapture. So if you think about the status quo on what you enjoy today, I think people's perception, and this is pure, basically close to pure speculation on my part, but I get to do that as an economist. That's what makes us like weathermen. You don't have to be accountable for my actions, but so if this is the speed, this is kind of the baseline speed that we're used to. The large fraction of users are not the top 10%, top even 50%. I mean, everybody uses the internet, poor people and rich people alike, right? And so they want to be able to sell stuff to poor people. If that makes up 80% of the demographic, then why would they raise the price on them to not allow them to buy when they're the bulk of the purchaser, right? So it almost doesn't make sense in that regard. So, but net neutrality forced them to offer new advances, which might be expensive to everybody, to keep ramping people up. So I think people have the perception that that the internet would slow down for the poor. I don't think it'll slow down. In fact, it'll probably speed up, but maybe at not quite the pace. So now it'll allow them to offer further advances. It's not a zero-sum game that the people who can afford the high speeds take it at the expense of the low, but rather through innovation and new creativity, they're going to be able to push the limits on the high and recoup that expensive research and development because somebody out there is willing to pay an extra $100 a month to have the super duper. But it's not going to be at the expense of the poor person. We're just going to have differential pricing. So it'll be a medium and then the regular. But I suspect the regular is going to be just fine the way we had it. That's my guess on what that allows. Whereas if we now try to have equality, right, then we never get better than where we're at. I kind of think the slow people, the regular people, won't be on a consistent path. I think there'll be spillover effects that brings up their speed too. But if we never get to better than this speed, the progress of technology, the upward surge of speeds and abilities, that gets slowed down by not allowing price discrimination. Right? That's all this is price discrimination. You guys know that leads to more efficient outcomes. So. All right, so good. That should be an interesting topic. See what your investment thing is, and yeah, questions or comments on that?
Sometimes I like to see the image going around. It's like 525 to see this picture. What net neutrality is going to be like?
Oh, yeah.
I can't even get into this.
There's so much disinformation out there. It's ridiculous.
Okay, this stuff like that makes me so mad.
Like I want to
say it like this. Like you realize this didn't go into effect until like 2 years ago. Like
Right.
was it like this 2 years ago?
It's barely been in
No.
effect. Yeah, that's the other argument. It's like we got where we are today because it wasn't in effect, and it's just going to, I think,
But no
bog
one
it
gets
down.
that. I want you and Dr. Challenge to sit down because I tried to explain like little economic things in my school class. I'm the only econ person in there, and they all look at me like I'm the worst person in the world. Like I have no heart, no soul. I'm trying to I speak strictly.
But get used to it, okay?
Yeah.
It kind of comes with
And
the
it's like-
territory.
But those little crazy girls that are going to be so affected by all this random stuff. I feel like Satan in that class. I blame you. I blame you.
Well, this theory, honestly, if I don't mind tooting my own horn, what I just presented to you, I've kind of in my head thought of, but I think this helps articulate it actually pretty good. So, and again, it's pure speculation. I might be completely wrong, but that's, with the little bits and pieces that I've gathered over time, I think that's a pretty decent argument. So, yeah, it takes a while. I've been at this stuff for, what now, 26 years, so.
It's just like a financial business night. Cool. Like all the student problems going around. Be like,
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, like minimum wage. Why is minimum wage done? That's a hot topic. So, all right. So let's talk about multi-collinearity, and then we're going to call it a day here. I want to give you guys a nudge on this particular sheet. So we're going to do this case study in more detail 2 weeks from now. This is the price of Chardonnay, the price of Cabernet Sauvignon, and the price of Merlot. So we got the price of wine, right? We got the price of wine, and then this data was collected over different weeks. So they just analyzed the prices. And so multicollinearity is an issue that comes out when you have two seemingly perhaps independent variables, but they're not very independent. They move together. And so that's what this is showing here. If you chart out the prices over time, one goes up, they all go up. One goes down, they all go down, right? And so, and maybe having one variable in there is okay, but if one's trying to do substitutes or complements or something like that, you need to be aware of this issue. So he's got this correlation matrix, which you can have Excel pop up for you too. And so it shows the high degree of correlation. The price of Chardonnay is 100% correlated with the price of Chardonnay. Right? So that's what these ones are down here. And then the table just fills in how did the other variables move together. So the price of Merlot is 97.5% correlated with the price of Chardonnay. Okay, so that kind of helps diagnose whether two variables might be too strongly related with each other. Okay, I'll let you maybe just take a quick glance at that before I advance it. Okay, so what happens? So this guy, this author of this thing is just borderline crazy. That's why I think this is really fun. But he put so much work into this. So this is 24 regressions to illustrate this point for you guys. So what he did is he took a regression. There's 3 columns, as you notice here, 1, 2, and 3. And so in the first column, he ran the regression with the price of Merlot dependent upon the price of Chardonnay and the price of Cab. And then let the Excel, remember Excel is just a big calculator, it's going to poop out numbers no matter what. And so we get these coefficients, and we don't have any significance here with the t-stat. We get the R-squared, of course, and the R-squared is pretty high, 0.88, because they're also related to each other. So it's actually a pretty good fit for a model in terms of R-square, but the coefficients end up being a little noisy. So the second column is the price of Merlot on Chardonnay alone. And then the third column is the price of Merlot with the price of Chardonnay. Price of Cab. Price of Merlot depending on the price of Cab. So each time he added observations. So the first run shows the model ran with 15 observations. And then he added 5. And then he added 5 more. Observations 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and then eventually it ends here somewhere, 49, 50. So there's 50 observations total. And so look at what's happening to the coefficients. So watch your eyeball here on column 1. Just look at the coefficient values. So as we move up, are they staying pretty consistent or not?
Decreasing.
They're decreasing, 0.6, 0.1, right? So they're kind of bouncing around, is what we find with multicollinearity. They're not following the same pattern. And then on the individual outputs, they can be pretty different in some cases. So Chardonnay in this model is 0.15 of an effect for Chardonnay, but here it's actually 0.73. So it's quite a bit stronger. Look at the t-stat, 25 of course, is very significant. So in this model, the sharing of Chardonnay and Cab are making the coefficients kind of garbage. So the computer can't quite pick up which one is it. Is it Cab or is it Chardonnay? And so then it ultimately splits up the difference in whatever way is slightly different for that model. And that's why we see the coefficient values bouncing around as we get more output. Look at what's happening with the coefficient value here. 0.73, 0.74. 0.75, 0.74, right? Fairly consistent, which is what you'd expect, as long as there's a decent number of observations, that the coefficient values wouldn't be bouncing around. So that is the problem with multicollinearity, is if you have 2 variables here, he kind of looks at, he just mapped out that coefficient, how it's bouncing around all over. So that's the problem. So when you choose your independent variables for your paper, you can do that correlation matrix to make sure that, hey, you know, these 2 things that are explaining crime or something aren't too related to each other. Because otherwise it'll lead to some garbage. Wait, here's how coefficient values. Oh, also it pertains to you. No, you got it. So if you have 2 independent variables that are too closely correlated with each other, then the coefficients that they crank out will be potentially garbage. So if you're trying to explain crime and you've got, oh, I think it might be this, but it also might be this, but if those 2 thises are too closely related to each other, then that'll kind of screw up the results. Okay. And so the easiest thing to do is you drop one. So we're going to, for this model, I think it turns out Chardonnay is a better predictor, has a higher R squared. So the answer to a problem like this is just to drop one of the variables. So we're either going to pick Chardonnay or we're going to pick Merlot, or pick Cab, sorry, Merlot's kind of variable. We're going to pick Cab or we're going to pick Chardonnay. We're just going to drop one. And think about it, that makes sense. If they move like this together, you don't need both of them, right? Because it's picking up the relationship already through one of the variables. Okay? All right, I'll take a good place to wrap it. Good rest, good lunch. Yeah, I mixed in a little lunch. Alex, you missed out on some good food. We went for a little field trip.